They found the first cartel enforcer at dawn, zip-tied to the Maple Ridge welcome sign. By sunset, 3 more high-ranking members of the Valverde cartel were discovered scattered across town, each one defeated by someone they had gravely underestimated. Whispers filled the small Montana town about the boot prints found in the dirt beside each captive, but nobody connected them to Henry Calloway, the quiet rancher who had moved to town 5 years ago after what everyone assumed was a tragic accident. The townsfolk had always wondered why he chose to live alone, why he seemed to know too much about the cartel's movements north from the border, and why his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. They were about to get their answers, and those answers would change everything they thought they knew about the old man they'd been bringing casseroles to every Sunday. The morning sun beat down on Henry's shoulders as he methodically checked the fencing along his northern pasture. His callous hands moved with practiced efficiency, tightening barbed wire with a precision born from years of experience. His boots sank slightly into the damp earth, and his left leg ached from old injuries that never quite healed. A dust cloud on the horizon caught his attention. 2 black SUVs approached along the dirt road, their tinted windows reflecting the harsh Montana sun. Henry's expression didn't change, but his hand instinctively moved to the modified compartment in his truck's side panel. The vehicle stopped about 30 yards from his position, and 4 men emerged, led by a figure Henry recognized from old intelligence reports, Miguel Contras, the Valverde cartel's regional lieutenant. He had aged since his file photo, but the scorpion tattoo curling up his neck was unmistakable. "Senor Calloway," Contras called out, his accent thick with false courtesy. "We've come to discuss business." Henry adjusted his worn-out Stetson, buying time to scan their positions. 2 men flanking Contras, another hanging back by the vehicles. But his trained eye caught subtle movement in the tree line, at least 3 more trying to circle around back. "My ranch isn't for sale," Henry replied evenly. "Never has been, never will be." Contras' smile didn't reach his eyes. "The situation has changed. Water rights in this region have become complicated. We're offering fair compensation." A bead of sweat rolled down Henry's neck as he recalled similar conversations from his past life. Cartel euphemisms for territory expansion. They needed his land's water access to support their operations moving north from the border. "Nothing complicated about my water rights, Mr. Contras. They've been in my family for 3 generations. One of Contras's men stepped forward, hand resting too casually near his concealed weapon. "You don't understand, old man. This isn't a negotiation." Henry shifted slightly, positioning himself at the optimal angle he had calculated years ago for this exact scenario. "No," he agreed quietly. "It isn't." The next few seconds exploded into action. The man reaching for his weapon found his wrist caught in a grip that shouldn't have been possible from someone Henry's age. His gun clattered to the ground as Henry used his own momentum to send him sprawling. The old rancher became a pivot point. Years of adapted combat training transforming what others saw as frailty into something lethal. Contras backpedaled, genuine shock replacing his practiced smile. "What the..." The sound of approaching sirens cut him off. Sheriff Jake Thornton's patrol car appeared on the horizon, right on schedule. Henry had called him the moment he spotted the dust cloud, knowing the cartel's initial approach would be just a warning. "Seems we'll have to continue this discussion another time," Contras said, masking his surprise with a sneer. "Think carefully about our offer, Senor Calloway. Accidents happen on ranches all the time," as the cartel vehicles retreated. Sheriff Thornton pulled up alongside Henry, his weathered face creased with concern. "You all right?" "Just another morning in Maple Ridge," he replied, already cataloging the intel he'd gathered, license plates, faces, the specific models of their weapons. "They'll be back." The sheriff shook his head. "This is getting out of hand." Henry studied the departing vehicles. "Let's just say I've gotten good at reading signs." The wind carried the distant sound of thunder, or perhaps it was the cartel vehicles regrouping. Henry allowed himself a small smile, remembering an old instructor's words. The best predator is the one they never see coming. Henry Calloway hadn't spent 5 years tending cattle. He'd spent them turning his land into a trap. That night, the fluorescent lights of Maple Ridge Medical hummed overhead as Dr. Maria Vasquez examined Henry's leg. 5 years of these checkups had built trust between them, though Henry revealed only what was necessary about his injury. The muscle tone in your leg is maintaining well, Maria noted, making adjustments to his chart. Whatever you're doing out on that ranch, keep it up. Henry smiled, though his mind flashed back to the morning's confrontation. Just trying to keep busy. Maria sat down, her clipboard fixed on him with a knowing look. I saw those SUVs heading toward your place this morning. The whole town's talking about it. People need something to gossip about. Henry deflected, but his hand unconsciously rubbed his thigh, where the old bullet wound lay hidden. Maria's voice pulled him back. You went somewhere else for a moment. Just thinking about carving season. He lied smoothly, years of practice outside the clinic ingrained in him. The town buzzed with typical small-town activity as Henry's boots crunched against the gravel, moving toward his truck when a young woman approached. Rosa Delgado, barely in her 20s, carried herself with the weariness of someone who had seen too much too young. Mr. Calloway, she said hesitantly, I heard you might need help on the ranch. Henry studied her carefully. New faces in Maple Ridge were rare. Who told you that? The sheriff mentioned it, she admitted. I just moved here from El Paso, trying to start fresh. Something in Rosa's eyes spoke of running from something or someone. Henry recognized that look from his years of working counter-cartel operations. He also noticed a slight bulge of papers in her jacket pocket. Likely immigration documents carefully preserved. Ever worked a ranch before? No, sir, but I learned fast and I'm not afraid of hard work. Henry nodded toward his truck. Let's talk at the ranch. I don't discuss business in town. The drive back revealed more about Rosa through subtle tells. The way she scanned surroundings, her careful attention to potential escape routes. This wasn't just someone looking for ranch work. As Henry's ranch came into view, the late evening sun casting long shadows across the fields, he noticed fresh tire tracks near his fence line. Cartel surveillance, no doubt. First rule, Henry said as they parked, if you see any vehicles you don't recognize, you call me immediately. Rosa's posture shifted slightly. You worried about the cartel? Should I be? Rosa slowly pulled out her papers. I testified against them in El Paso. Witness protection wanted to send me to Ohio, but I chose here instead. Henry absorbed this information, pieces clicking into place. Sheriff Thornton didn't just mention the job, did he? Rosa shook her head. He said you might understand my situation. Henry glanced toward the barn, where surveillance systems' hidden monitors flickered. Seems we might be useful to each other. A crack of gunfire shattered the quiet evening air. Henry ducked instinctively, pulling Rosa down beside him behind the truck. The distant hillside flashed again, a muzzle flare in the dark. Go! Henry barked, shoving her toward the house. He sprinted for the barn, muscles protesting as he yanked open a locked chest and pulled out his rifle, loading it with precision born from experience. A second shot rang out, hitting the dirt inches from his boot. Henry exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the ridge. They were testing him, sending a message. He raised his rifle, pressing his cheek against the stock, and sighted down the scope. A shadow moved, and he squeezed the trigger. The night swallowed the sound of the shot, but the silence that followed was its own message. They weren't the only hunters out here. A low groan carried across the wind as Henry shifted slightly, steadying his rifle to watch as the figure on the ridge collapsed. But he knew better than to think it was over. The cartel didn't operate on fear alone. They played the long game. The barn door creaked open behind him. Rosa, breathing hard, held a revolver with both hands, her knuckles white. They're not done, are they? Henry shook his head. Not even close. This was just a warning. Rosa swallowed hard. Then what do we do? Henry looked at her, then back at the darkening horizon. The ridge beyond his land was no longer just his own. It was contested ground. We get ready, he said, because they'll be back. Another sound, softer this time, a low, almost imperceptible hum. Headlights crested the hill in the distance. 2 sets, then 4 more vehicles. More men. Henry tightened his grip on his rifle and turned to Rosa. Welcome to the war. As headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the ranch like a predator's gaze, Rosa gripped her revolver tighter, her heart racing. The convoy of SUVs closed in, a clear sign that the Valverde cartel was preparing for a retaliation that would test their resolve. How do we prepare for this? She whispered, the reality of their situation pressing down on them like the weight of the night sky. Stay low. Stay quiet, Henry instructed, his voice steady but filled with a controlled urgency. We're outnumbered, but we know this land better than they do. Together, they melted into the shadows, their breaths synchronized in the thick air as the sounds of the vehicles grew louder, gravel crunching beneath heavy tires. The faint glow of the headlights marked their approach, and with it came a feeling of dread choking off the night. Henry moved like a ghost, guiding Rosa toward the barn. Follow my lead. I've set traps around the property. We may still have the element of surprise. The barn door creaked as they entered, the scent of hay and earth a reassuring reminder of their shared purpose. Inside, the dark was punctuated by faint light filtering through gaps in the wood. Monitors flickered on a makeshift table, displaying feeds from strategically placed cameras around the ranch. They're not just here for the water. This is about control, Henry said, keeping his voice low. They want to show the town who truly dictates the terms. Rosa felt a surge of determination. Then we show them they picked the wrong target. As they crouched behind the table, the sound of footsteps drew closer. A group of enforcers disembarked from the SUVs and fanned out, methodically searching the ranch. The palpable tension in the air crackled as one of the men moved toward the barn. Keep your cool, Henry hissed, assessing their options. If he could outmaneuver them, they had a shot. Seconds crawled as the man stepped closer, unaware of the storm gathering within the barn. Henry held his breath, every muscle poised for action. Then, the door creaked open. In one fluid motion, Henry lunged forward, his rifle aimed at the doorway. Now! Rosa fired, the crack of her revolver ringing through the air like a call to arms. The enforcer staggered back, shock painted across his features as Henry's rifle barked in response, striking true. Go! Henry urged, and they shot from behind cover, ducking outside where chaos erupted like a firestorm. Outside, adrenaline surged like wildfire, the moon illuminating figures moving in a deadly choreography. More cartel enforcers were running towards them from different angles, but Henry and Rosa darted amid the chaos, a unity forged in battle. Rosa, to the south, there's tree cover, Henry shouted, directing her toward the line of trees spilling over the hill's edge. They sprinted, breaths labored but filled with righteous fury. Bullets ricocheted around them as their pursuers closed in, and with every stride, the urgency of survival pushed them forward into the thickets. Just as they reached the edge, gunfire erupted behind them, sending splinters flying from a nearby tree. Rosa stumbled, but Henry caught her, their connection forged with both panic and purpose. Keep moving, he yelled, guiding her through the foliage. The silhouette of their pursuers danced against the backdrop of the moon as they continued their relentless pursuit. Henry needed a plan, a diversion, something to turn the tides. He spotted a row of old barrels tucked away in a clearing. We can use those, he pointed urgently. If we blow them, it'll create a distraction. Rosa nodded, understanding the stakes. What do we need? Just cover me, Henry replied, pushing her forward. I'll set it up. As he scrambled toward the barrels, Rosa kept her weapon trained in the opposite direction, her heart pounding in her ears. The sound of footsteps grew louder, the cartel henchmen closing in. Time was slipping through their fingers like grains of sand. Henry moved quickly, retrieving a flare from his pack while trying to keep himself low from the possible gunfire. Breathing deeply, he ignited the flare, the bright light cutting through the darkness, illuminating the clearing as he hurled it toward the barrels. "Fire in the hole!" he shouted. The explosion rocked the ground as flames flickered, consuming the barrels in a fiery eruption. The shockwave created chaos, and the enforcers were momentarily disoriented, smoke rising around them as shadows teetered in the blaze. "Now!" Henry yelled, pulling Rosa into the fray as they rushed past the chaos becoming their ally. They slipped through the smoke, maneuvering toward the tree-line as more fire crackled behind them. The night was alive with echoes of gunfire and shouts, but in the moment, they belonged to the forest. They moved quickly, the thick canopy above shrouding their figures in darkness. As they reached the edge of the woods, panting heavily, they could hear the sounds of confusion fading behind them. What next? Rosa breathlessly questioned, glancing back at the still smoldering site of their desperate escape. "Run north," Henry instructed. "We need to reach the old mine. It's a solid place to regroup and plan our next move." Together they darted into the woods, weaving between trees as panic transformed into something else. An unyielding spirit fueled by determination and the unwavering need to survive. But as they pushed deeper into the forest, the reality settled in. They were more than just a rancher and a fugitive. They had become warriors, bound together by survival, their fates intertwining against the violent tides of the cartel that threatened their lives. Little did they know, danger lurked not just behind them, but also ahead. As they navigated the dense forest, Rosa felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with anxiety. Henry moved ahead, wide-eyed and alert, scanning for signs of pursuit, but the thick foliage around them swallowed the sounds of their escape. She didn't want to think about what might happen if they were caught. "Henry, what if they find us? What if they come after us again?" "That's a risk we'll have to deal with," he responded, his voice low and steady. "But the first step is to get to the mine. They won't be expecting us to make such a bold move." The air was thick with the scent of pine, but it wasn't just the forest that offered cover. With each step, memories flooded Rosa's mind, the harrowing reasons that brought her to Maple Ridge in the first place. But Henry's calm presence reignited her fighting spirit. "Keep moving," Henry urged. "We're almost there." Ahead, the trees began to thin out, revealing a small clearing with an opening leading into the old mine, a remnant of the town's past, long abandoned and overgrown with weeds, but it held secrets deep within. As they stepped inside, darkness enveloped them like a heavy blanket. Henry produced a flashlight from his pack, illuminating the rocky walls that surrounded them, a reminder that even in dark places, there was still light to be found. "Stay close," Henry instructed, leading Rosa through the narrow passage. They slipped past debris and crumbling beams, their breaths echoing against the cave's walls. Rosa's mind raced. What would they do next? How could they turn the tide against the cartel? "Henry," she whispered, "how much do you know about the cartel's operations? Their next moves?" "That's the problem," he replied, his brow furrowed as he focused on the tunnel ahead. "They're always 2 steps ahead. But if I can get intel on what they're planning, we can stay 1 step ahead ourselves." "I testified against the Valverde cartel," Rosa told him, feeling a mix of vulnerability and strength. "I know their tactics, how they think. If we can get to their communications, I might be able to tap into their plans." Henry glanced at her, a flicker of hope igniting in his expression. "Then that's our next target. We need their information to put an end to this." Outside, the faint sound of crackling leaves snapped their attention back to the entrance. Voices carried through the opening, recognizable tones from the cartel's men. "They've already found out where we're headed," Henry warned. "We need to hurry." They continued deeper into the mine, navigating twists and turns, the ground uneven beneath their feet. Rosa's heart raced, anxiety clutching at her throat, but Henry's presence brought a modicum of calm. Light flickered at the end of the tunnel, and they reached a small chamber, filled with old mining equipment and rusting metal tools long forsaken by time. "Let's set up here," he suggested, scanning the chamber. "We can find a vantage point to check their movements." Rosa moved quickly, choosing a spot against the back wall, with a view of the entrance. As Henry pulled out his backpack, he rummaged through resources. "Do you still have a phone? Anything we can use to communicate?" she inquired, already aware that in their world, technology could be as valuable as a weapon. "Only a burner phone," he replied, grimacing as he retrieved it from his belongings. "I used it for emergencies, but it'll have to do." The tension between them thickened as they prepared for what came next. Rosa pulled out a map of the area she had kept hidden in her jacket pocket, a blueprint of the town and its surrounding territories. "We can use this to head toward the old storage facility by the river. They often keep their shipments there." "Good call," Henry agreed, examining the map with keen interest. "We can stake it out and see if they consistently use that route. But first, let's check if the coast is clear." They edged cautiously back toward the mine entrance, hearts pounding in their chests. Rosa took a deep breath, focusing on the distant sounds of male voices filtering inside the crevice, the shadows of light flickering in burgeoning dusk. "Do you hear that?" Henry whispered, eyes narrowing as they slowly peered out. Rosa nodded, her pulse racing at the sound of shifting footsteps and muffled conversations. The cartel men were on the hunt, and they were dangerously close. "I think I see them." Henry gently pressed her back as he maneuvered their body deeper into the shadows. "Let's wait it out," Rosa advised, feeling nerves ebb and flow like waves. As the voices grew closer, Henry held her gaze, conveying a silent agreement. They would wait for the perfect moment. But then, something caught her attention, a glint of metal in the fading light. One of the cartel members was holding a weapon, a rifle, brimming with hostility. "That's not good," she whispered, eyes wide. "What do we do?" Just then, one of the cartel men walked into clear view, grumbling about their progress, while the others began to fan out, seeking any sign of their earlier quarry. But something in Henry shifted. He moved resolutely, just beyond Rosa, an unmistakable determination that painted his expression as steel. "We need to stop them now," he muttered, an edge to his voice that sparked urgency in Rosa's veins. The plan had been to gather intel, but they were being pinned down. And Henry Calloway, the quiet rancher hiding secrets beneath layers of grief, now emerged ready to reclaim what was taken from him, from both his land and his past. "Let's do it," Rosa breathed, strategy giving way to instinct. In the dim light of the mine, they held on to one another, hearts as one as they prepared for the ghosts of their struggles and fates to collide with the darkness waiting outside. With a shared understanding, they exchanged glances that held the weight of unspoken promises, survival, retribution, and an unquenchable thirst for justice. As Henry began to creep forward, Rosa took a step back, balancing the weight of her weapon in her hands. It was time to show the cartel that the broken-hearted quietly carry the fiercest vengeance. With 3 cartel men standing outside the mine, Henry moved forward with a hunter's grace, every step deliberate. His eye roamed for anything he could use, tuning into their movements with a battle-hardened focus. "Rosa, get ready," Henry instructed, his voice a low whisper. "On my signal, we strike." She nodded, heart racing as she gripped her revolver, her previous nerves sharpening into steely resolve. The cartel members continued their search, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. One of them leaned against the mine's entrance, casually scanning the tree line, while the others paced restlessly, exchanging worried glances. "Nothing here," one of them spat, his irritation bubbling. "We need to search the rest of the area. They could be anywhere." Henry shifted, slightly angling himself toward the back of the nearest opportune man, breathing calmly to steady his nerves. "Now," he hissed, emerging from the shadows. Rosa sprang into action beside him. The sound of gunfire erupted in a fierce duet. Her revolver roared, sending a bullet ricocheting off the wall of the mine as Henry discharged rapid fire from his rifle. The initial shock of their assault caught the cartel men off guard, and as they turned, confusion morphed swiftly into terror. One man stumbled back, falling to the ground, while the others frantically returned fire, the air thick with the sounds of chaos splitting the night. "Cover me!" Henry shouted, diving behind a rock as bullets peppered the ground around them. Adrenaline surged in Rosa's veins as she took stock of the scene. The second cartel man was a second away from aiming directly towards Henry's spot. She couldn't let that happen. With calculated precision, she aimed her revolver and fired, striking the man squarely in the shoulder. He cried out, falling down, momentarily distracted from his aim. "Nice shot," Henry called, reloading quickly and taking aim at the last remaining cartel member, who was now backed against the entrance, despair flooding his features as he tried to regain composure. The cartel member fired wildly, but terror transformed his shots into desperation, their accuracy wavering. "Rosa, now!" Henry commanded, and they both advanced. "We won't let them escape." They surged forward, and Rosa, fueled by a fierce conviction, stepped into the entrance to block their escape. "Drop your weapon," she barked at the remaining enforcer, feeling powerful in her newfound intensity. "Now!" The cartel member hesitated, seeing the determination in their eyes, a moment punctuated by tension. "Is this how it's going to end?" he swore, his voice quaking with defiance. "You think you've won? The cartel will always rise." "Not today," Henry shot back, leveling his rifle. With no other choice, the cartel enforcer surrendered. "Fine. I'll tell you whatever you want to know." Suddenly, shadows enshrouded them again, and Henry's instincts kicked in. "Rosa, get back," he cried, anticipating what lurked beyond. With sharper hearing, they caught the sounds of distant vehicles approaching, a fleet nearing from the road ahead, faster than they expected. "We can't stick around," shouted Rosa. In one swift movement, Henry and Rosa moved apart as the cartel enforcer dropped to his knees in surrender, hands held high. "I'll give you anything," he bellowed. "Just please don't kill me." Henry narrowed his eyes, the world around him closing in. The vehicles rolled closer than he would have liked. "Talk," he commanded, his voice low and threatening, his gaze cutting through the chaos. "What do you know about the cartel's movements?" The enforcer hesitated before nodding vigorously. "They're planning a shipment through the river this week. I can help you stop it." But their time was running out as headlights flooded the entrance of the mine, illuminating a swirl of dust behind them. "Rosa, let's go," shouted Henry, grabbing her arm. They shot past the enforcer and sprinted deeper into the mine, abandoning the light. Behind them, voices thundered in a mixture of confusion and anger, a panic that would put them on deadly alert. Their footsteps echoed as they continued, the darkness swallowing them whole. But Rosa felt the adrenaline push them forward, propelled by their mission. "Henry," she whispered urgently, "where do we go?" "Follow me," he replied, focused on the turns in the maze of tunnels, carving a path through the shadows. As they ran, they were thrust back into the heart of the mine, and Henry pulled Rosa to an unexpected hollowed-out area where the walls were scattered with icons of old miners who had come searching for their fortunes. "Quickly," he urged, peering around. "There might be a way we can use this to our advantage." Rosa scanned their surroundings, her pulse quickening at the thought. "We could set up traps here. If we can lure them in, we could use the terrain against them." But Henry's gaze darkened. "They'll be looking for us. They won't charge in blindly. We need to make it look easy, and then catch them off guard," Rosa proposed, an idea igniting between them. Nodding, they both began to set up makeshift barricades, using whatever debris was available, while still keeping an eye on the tunnel's entrance. "I can hear them," Rosa murmured, suddenly listening intently. "Stay alert," Henry cautioned, drawing his rifle closer. "They'll come for us, one way or another." Suddenly, the heavy thud of boots approached, and the light shone brightly through the tunnel, illuminating the entrance. "There they are," a voice shouted, giving away their position. As an enforcer stepped into view, Rosa prepared herself for anything. "Now!" she commanded, urging forward. Henry and Rosa pulled the trigger simultaneously, their shot echoing through the cavern, and the enforcer fell back into the shadows. "What the hell?" another shouted, hesitating at the entrance, caught between fear and desire to intimidate. "I can't see them." "Lure them in," Henry barked, adrenaline fueling him. "So we can take them out." Rosa nodded, her heart pounding as she threw a rock out into the open, creating a sound that echoed through the mine's hallways. "Come on, let's end this." With the last remnants of courage, the remaining cartel members surged forward, only to be met with a trap waiting to snap shut. The moment they had been waiting for, a chance to turn the tides. In the depths of darkness, a battle fought in silence became the war of their lifetimes. It was far from over, but as they pushed forward, blood pumping through their veins, both Henry and Rosa could feel the power of the moment, ready to scorch the earth beneath the cartel's ambitions. They had chosen to fight back, and now chaos and retribution both danced on the horizon as night enveloped them in its embrace.